Yeah, a lot of people don't really, few people I think take a step back and look at their calendar and look at cycling their training. And I mean, this site is about bodybuilding. So the people that are typically members here are ones that they're really looking to craft a specific body. And I like I cycle my training as well, and I'm glad you brought that up about the need to look back and say, okay, when do you want to look your best? I mean, professional athletes do this. They peak out during their season, and the rest of the year is really built around peaking out at a certain time point. I mean, look at pro bodybuilders do the exact same thing.
Yep.
I mean, if you could see these guys in the off season, they look pregnant, for crying out loud. So, because they're trying to do just like you said, they're not too worried about gaining body fat in the off season because they want to add the muscle, and then they know when their contest season comes and when they're going to be taking the photos for the magazines, and then strip off the body fat for those time periods. And I like the cycling method there and really making sure, because would you agree? I mean, it looks like people try to do this a little bit too quickly. I mean, what are some of the challenges there with trying to do this too quickly, and what are some of the roadblocks that people can come up against if they really try and like you said, cut calories too soon or too much in a day, or take their training too much, too high of a level, maybe trying to do it too intensely, following that magazine article or whatever?
Yeah, well, if you're trying to cut calories too drastically and lose fat too fast, like I said, you're gonna run into the problem that you're gonna lose muscle also. And every time, I mean, it's a good point, because you do have to maintain a certain training intensity and resistance level to try and maintain your muscle when you're. I mean, I'd say one of the biggest goals when you're losing fat is to try and maintain your lean muscle. If you're losing muscle, it's going to start making things harder, and the more muscle you lose, the harder it's going to be to lose fat. So I found, with a lot of my clients over the years, and myself personally, I mean, I'm 32 now, and I've probably been training since I was 15. So, I almost got 2 decades of experience under my belt just with trying, a million different programs. I'm sure you're the same way. But what I found is that even at periods of the time when I was trying to build a lot of muscle and overeat, that the more muscle I built, it was actually easier for me to stay lean. And it was almost like the more I tried to build muscle, my body would just rebel against putting on fat. I don't know. It was a little example there, but yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense, because you've already brought up some of the hormonal changes that happen, and you know what, Mike, few people that have fat loss programs out there ever even bring up the hormones beyond things like testosterone. And, the whole chemical soup that happens in your body as a result of the changes that you put it through, whether dietary or whether training-wise. But, so what you just said makes perfect sense, because, now people are starting to become more educated about the factor of muscle and fat burning.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, going through that process of trying to build muscle really starts, jacking up those hormones like growth hormone, like testosterone. Some of those we call them, anabolic hormones that come in there that are muscle building / fat burning. They kind of have a dual purpose there.
And another point that you just reminded me of is that the harder you train your muscles with weight training, with sprint training, with these types of high intensity forms of training, your muscle's ability to process, to process the carbohydrates you're eating, blood sugar, all of it, all this stuff. It's like you compare somebody that trains intensely with resistance training and somebody who either is sedentary or only does cardio-based training. And that person that uses high-intensity training and resistance training is going to be able to process carbohydrates easier. And because, if you think about it, you're expending, every time you train that way, your body is depleting muscle glycogen, and now it wants to fill it back up. And your body knows that needs to do that, and so you can get away with eating more in general. It's just something to think about. I mean, I know it's pretty powerful when you train regularly hard. You can definitely, not just the calories that you're expending, but you can definitely eat more in general than a sedentary person or just someone who trains lightly.
Yeah, great point. You know, we've brought up the word training here quite a bit, just in the early stages here, and of course I probably got about 50% training questions and 50% dietary questions. Just as a general, I mean, where do you place the importance for, you know, things like diet versus training? When you're working with people, do you find which area do you find that they need the most help with? Are they not training correctly, or do you think that they're not eating correctly?